thinking about nama and rupa, but that is thinking. It's not the moment of understanding or developing, seeing without thinking. And if we try to do something, going away from this moment, turn back left or right, that is not the way. The way is very natural, as it sees, it's that characteristic which sees.
People get so frustrated if we say, if sati arises, we will understand, because they will wonder what to do to come to this stage, because we talk about it now, we understand the theory, but they feel so hopeless how to understand all this. Just listening, only listening and hearing again and again, is that the condition?
Yes, but what hope is?
It is attachment.
So,
hoping. It is true.
You would like to have more hope?
Not at all.
Because you hope to experience it.
Yeah.
Okay. You hope to do something to get it.
People like to understand better the difference between nama and rupa. But here, there has to be sati first, so they will say, oh, I don't know how to.
The I is not the sati.
Yeah.
So the I can never have sati. Sati is sati, seeing is seeing.
But they hear it and they say, oh, well, I can't do anything with that.
Right.
That's the I.
No one can do anything.
And what?
Right. I can't do anything with it, that's right.
Can you make this hard? Can you make this sour?
Sour? Not at all. So they have to listen to this, to these words. That is the only thing.
Yeah, that's why after his enlightenment, Buddha tended not to teach, because it's against the current of attachment. All the way, even from hearing, for what? For understanding. Why do we come here? Why do we talk about realities? Just only for having understanding, not having more than that, because without understanding, how can vipassana jnana or the insight arise without any understanding? So it's the opposite way of urging to have more lobha, try to do so hard, and try to know that the reality is work, that function, not I or not self who is now performing the function of seeing or thinking. Pleasant or unpleasant, all these are different types of namas.
It looks as if the step between Sukha Maya Panya and Chinta Maya Panya hasn't been taken. That most people don't apply it to the present moment. That it's always like thinking about what to do.
So it's not a matter of what to do at all, but to understand.
But they quote suttas. A friend of mine always quote this sutta. Anathapindika, with 500 lay followers, approached the Buddha, and they were very generous. And the Buddha said, you should retire now and then. It's good to have viveka, retire and be quiet.
And could they retire without conditions and understanding?
Because at that time it was different, I think.
No matter what time.
Yeah.
Okay. Another bindika was another bindika, and the others are the others. Not exactly the same like another bindika at all. Why do we hope to be like another bindika?
This person will not be satisfied with this answer.
Because they do not appreciate understanding. They appreciate themselves wanting to have very good things.
No, he quotes suttas all the time, and this is in the sutta.
Yes, but what is the meaning of that sutta or that word? Without right understanding, without detachment, or with the self?
Yeah. Because nowadays when they read the sutta, they don't understand that it is this detachment, this right understanding. But they had to do samatha subject.
And what is samatha?
Calm.
And what is calm?
This kusala citta.
Yeah, it is now kusala citta?
Yes, we listen.
If most people could know the difference between kusala and akusala, even on the level of thinking, they'll know that what is calm.
And that leads to Phil's question number 2. He writes, also, I have often heard in the talks that it is not so important to know kusala from akusala. So it seems to me that trying or intending to know kusala from akusala is not helpful. But if knowing kusala from akusala arises due to conditions, it can be very helpful. You have said, what good is it to know kusala from agusala if we don't know that realities are not self? It seems to me that we will know kusala from akusala before we know realities to be not self. We know what is harmful to ourselves and others before we know the characteristics of dhammas, or so it seems to me.
Theoretically, one can tell what is kusala and what is akusala. But actually, can we tell the moment which is kusala from akusala? So it's only thinking theoretically about what is kusala and akusala. And for the first vipassana jnana, it's the nama rupa parichetayana, the knowledge which understands the demarcation of nama from rupa. Because now, at this moment, the nama arises and falls away very fast, continuously. And when there is awareness of nama, at that moment, the panya attend to the characteristic of nama, no matter it's kusala or akusala. It cannot attend to the characteristic of kusala or akusala while there is no understanding of the nama, of that reality yet. So instead of trying to find out whether that is kusala or akusala, it's the self who's trying, but the panya which arises with right awareness attend to the characteristic of nama as just a reality. It goes away so fast, it doesn't wait until one can tell whether that reality is kusala or akusala, because it's only the development of understanding the characteristic of nama as not self, just that which can experience an object. And it is kusala or akusala for its nature, but in the beginning, can we know it without understanding or attend to the characteristic which is different from rupa? That is why for the old vipassana jnana, panya sees reality as it is, but it depends on the stages of vipassana jnana. For the first stage, it's not attending to understanding the difference because they are different, and panya attend to the characteristic of nama only. So it's possible to have three jhanas follow one another, like Namarupa Parichetayana, Paccaya Parikaha jhana, and Samasana jhana. Oh, it can go on, but one can see why these three.
At the same time, there can be understanding of kusala as kusala and akusala as akusala itself.
Because you see that we cannot know what would happen at moment vipassana jnana, exactly the same like now. No expectation for which Dhamma only for oneself.
No, I'm talking about when before the stages, just at the level of realizing that a moment of kusala is
Thinking, only thinking.
But it has value to
Why
know.
not? Why not?
Yeah.
But now we're talking about knowing nama and rupa as it is.
But for social life or like now, it's
Certainly,
good.
from the
Yeah.
very beginning, the teachings talk about kusala and akusala,
Yeah.
also vipaka and
Yeah.
kiriya too.
Yeah. But it's so difficult to explain to others that the self is coming in because they won't realize. One has to realize it. But how?
I think that we cannot know who knows how much,
Yeah.
but by talking about nama and rupa, it depends on the individual's accumulation. We don't have to ask, we don't have to expect, because it depends on such person to know how much he gets it. That's all.
I was actually just thinking, because you use that word unsatisfactory, that this isn't a satisfactory explanation of what a good example that is of dukkha, that when trying to understand there is always this frustration that until that moment of clarity, that will continue.
That's more a theoretical or conventional meaning.
Yes, but maybe it's helpful to understand that the answer is not so easy to have, that when you talk about the development being a natural process, then it's natural that dukkha is there all the way.
But we have to know the different levels, the meanings of dukkha. There are many different levels. For example, the noble truth of dukkha is deeper, the impermanence of all nama and rupa, and therefore they are dukkha because they are impermanent. Before we have realized that will take a long time, because it's the first vipassana jnana first, and then the second one is knowing the conditions, and then the third one, panya, begins to know the rising and falling away, and the fourth is the first principle, insight, which knows more precisely the arising and falling away. Before that, we really don't understand the truth of dukkha.
Not as precisely as you're describing, but at a theoretical level, the idea that things will never be satisfactory.
But it's the same as thinking of impermanence. Oh, life is so impermanent, everything is so impermanent. It's at the level of thinking only.
Is life dukkha?
We laugh. Well, that's because it's obvious that it's dukkha.
But momentary, very momentary.
I think that we just follow the word that life is dukkha. But we enjoy life at moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, and we think a lot about having all these things. So it's not life which is dukkha. The reality itself is dukkha in the sense of not permanent, arising and falling away. So as long as it's not that moment which experience the arising and falling away, we cannot say that life is dukkha, because I or he or she sometimes have dukkha, but it's the person who has dukkha, but not the nature of reality which is dukkha.
If we are asked the question, is life dukkha, we can give a new interpretation to the past.
Smiling and ask whether life is dukkha. See?
On the meeting, and you said that people are concerned about this word or that word, but it doesn't matter what words, what language, Thai, Pali, any word. Really, there are just these realities now through the different doorways, and any words are just to help us understand more about present reality from night to life, just seeing, hearing different realities being experienced, no matter how we talk about them or refer to them, the realities remain the same with or without any understanding of what appears.
So it's now, again, everything is now, no matter what word we use. For example, nimitta.
Yeah.
When we talk about realities like nama and rupa, we think about the reality which can experience object and the reality which cannot experience object. That's all. And it can condition understanding each reality like now as it is. But is that enough if we don't have more words about them? For example, that word nimitta is not far away at all. Right now, what appears is the impressions of realities, nimitta. For example, visible object arises and falls away so fast in split seconds. See, in split seconds. So which one is now appearing? We cannot pinpoint or tell at all. But what is now appearing is the nimitta of the arising and falling of realities. Even it's the visible object which is now seems to be permanent. Each one has arisen and fallen away. So what is left is the nimitta. So we know that now we have the reality which appears as permanent, but we begin to understand that beyond that is the moment of reality arising and falling away, which has to be penetrated so that Panya can become detached from what is seen as something, because it's only the reality which can appear when there is
Saturday or next.
Oh, so he's here next week. He's changed his ticket. He always does this. He has a ticket and then he changes.
In one of the discussions, I've heard you mentioning the watches on at night, the 3 watches, the night watches, as they are in the sutta. But I'm not sure for bhikkhus to. Or to, do you remember mentioning this subject? Or bhikkhus was
understand. Not this much.
Yeah, now is the best time to
That was said
I'm
for
talking about Vinaya.
less kilesa, less.
Yeah, I'm just thinking now about maybe jhana processes. So maybe
I think that there might be some night that one is sleepless, no time to develop understanding. But right understanding can understand it. It's better not to. Each moment, but no conditions to understand it as.
In the last, at the moment of vipassana, characteristic of that the aspect anatta understand directly. Who is developed samatha distinguish he can but not because of arise. That's my opinion.
Why do you say that the character?
The person who is developing samatha, they can understand the mental factor.
So it's not the understanding of the actual characteristic. It's
The
not.
characteristic of vitaka vichara, so he can get rid of
Samatha to
other
Does that person, is it known that it,
something,
so,
but
the knowledge of characteristic, you and I can know, have any direct relevance
Characteristic, you're referring to the three universal characteristics?
of Satipatthana knows.
Six.
Does not direct
The characteristic, can't we?
Vyanchana, the description and detail, as far as I understand it.
It doesn't need of the Eightfold Path. It needs more understanding of, can be sati, it can be thinking, it can be that which you call it vitaka, but it's thinking of that characteristic, but not as vipassana. And it is, but still, at that moment it understands what appears as something which is different, but not as it is. Like now, sanya is not seeing. Even seeing is now appearing. What about the understanding of it? Just a little bit, on and on, until it attains the degree of different moment of samatha. Is there calm now? See, and when it's samatha, it needs more than just now. When there is understanding, there is calm, but it's not like those who or dosa or whatever. So the person who develops samatha or tranquility understands the danger of clinging to sensuous object, but cannot eliminate or eradicate clinging at all, or even wrong feeling. Who does not have any understanding at all cannot develop samatha or calmness, tranquility. It has to be kusala moment of each object of samatha. For example, about color, see, it's only color, but see the danger, see, which in daily life, who sees the danger of attaching to sensuous object. Even that, the beginning is not yet begin. Yet, no matter what object, which is object of calmness, it has to be understood. Is it dangerous to cling to sensuous object, seeing right now as something? But for samatha, it's only that which is calm. The understanding of the truth is more than that, because color is not permanent. It arises and falls away, and ignorance takes it for it's not clear, but it begins to understand. At moment of seeing, at moment of hearing, at any moment, like or dislike, controllable from life to life by conditions, until there is the development of understanding from moment to moment. See, no matter kusala or akusala, when there is no understanding, it's akusala from moment to moment. And when it's the understanding, it's only that moment to another moment. The insight that really see the danger, because it's not the moment of directly experience the arising and falling away of reality yet. When we say unreality, see, who knows? The person who listens carefully will know that it's not under anyone's control to have it quickly, so soon, to experience it. but it's the moment of become less attached from hearing the truth little by little. That's why right understanding knows it is or it is not.
You mean that because of the particular level of panya, have the ability to understand that for that? So, sorry, you said about sanya. I heard you tell about sanya, but I get lost that idea. What's sanya?
What's your question? Sanya?
I can just say about sanya through your explanation, but I get lost that idea.
And the understanding
yeah.
of an object.
And the sanya that arises at the moment with the understanding marks the object and is purified by the panya. So for us, our sanya is, because all the objects marked are also marked, because there's a lot of marking of wrong view and so forth. So the sanya has a, as I understand it, has a bearing on the way the world realities are experienced, the way the world is perceived. But for the enlightened being, the sanya supports the understanding.
Sometimes people ask why we speak so much and remembers that it's only this, what is visible, that's seen at this very moment. This is the world. So this is the meaning of, you may have heard the term Upanisya Gochara. So Gochara means object, aramana. It means it becomes the decisive support for understanding, accumulates with understanding. And this is pariyatti understanding that accumulates and develops and gets used to what is the object that can appear now, that can be known now. If we'd never heard about visible object, sanya couldn't remember that is what is seen, but by hearing about it and remembering and marking and getting used to it, this is the way that understanding of reality cannot be developed in samatha bhavana, only in the development of vipassana bhavana, starting with pariyatti and satipatthana, to directly know it, on and on. So this is the difference, and this is what is meant by sound appearing now, just one world at a time. But there has to be Dhamma when it appears, because that is the deep characteristic of Dhamma, that it arises and falls away only one way. Sometimes people may think there are different ways or different approaches, or if they go and sit quiet, visible object is visible object, not what I see or anyone else sees or anyone else's citta, just that which appears at that moment.
Then I have a doubt. Panya can distinguish the... Oh no. No, sorry.
Like metta, we've talked quite a lot about metta. So when metta arises, does it have a characteristic? Is the characteristic of metta that is different from any other reality? And is metta, does it belong to you or me, or is it just a Dhamma? And can there be understanding of the nature of metta as a Dhamma, as reality?
Not now.
Now there may be thinking about it, considering, beginning to consider what its aspect is, how at that moment there is friendliness to others, how it's different from the moments of thinking about oneself. So there may be considering, and there may be considering that actually, like visible object, it's just a Dhamma that arises and passes away instantly, that it doesn't belong to me. So beginning to consider wisely about metta, which may arise at this moment or may appear now. This is the beginning, this is pariyatti understanding. So again, there can be the reflecting wisely, and sanya marks and remembers and gets used to what that reality is, so that gradually understanding develops. But if we say, oh, well, it doesn't appear and not yet, and what about vipassana jnana? It doesn't help at all, because, or it's doubt, can it ever be known? It's not understanding of what appears at this moment. So no matter whether it is visible object or metta or doubt, it's just Dhamma. It doesn't matter at all what it is. It doesn't matter how little understanding there is.
Thank you.
Because it can develop when and if there are conditions.
So I think we all agree that like any ordinary person can know the difference between when you are angry, when you like something, when you like and dislike, the difference. But still, I think it takes panya to know the differences between, just doesn't know about the non-self, the real characteristic of realities. But they can know how vichara is different from vitakka and how metta is different from lobha.
I didn't quite catch what you said, the panya, about the panya.
The panya in samatha, yes, can know the difference between metta and lobha and vitakka and vichara.
Yes, apparently it can.
My question about the able part. We are talking many times about the first one, like the leader. So it is the right understanding support all the mental factor to be arise, or is the mandatory for the other to arise with that? Or why? I mean, it is the leadership of the able part in that term.
Arise together.
All arise together.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's said that panya is the leader.
Panya is the leader.
Yes.
Okay.
Sama. Whatever it is.
So any moment of the right part, it has to be with the with the right feel, right? The first one, right understanding. Okay.
Yes.
Right view is right understanding. It's the same. So when we talk about right understanding, we're talking about samadhi, the first factor of the Eightfold Path.
Okay.
And it has to be accompanied by at least 5 other Eightfold Path factors whenever it arises, and it's the path. The 3 of them, the abstaining from wrong speech, wrong deeds and wrong livelihood, one or other may arise together as well. but there have to be the other 5 arising together.
So at the moment of the metta, for example, without understanding there, so no any of the 8 there, for sure.
Right. No sum up, no path factors. Ordinary kusala, whether it's including samatha, which comes with panya, there are no path factors at such moments. Only when there's a moment of insight, panya, satipatthana, this is referred to as the mundane path. And as Sarah said, there must be at least 5 of those path factors until a moment of enlightenment when all 8 will arise together.
Can you explain a little bit about the development of understanding about wholesome and unwholesome? We talk a lot about understanding, the development, understanding about realities, but can you explain a little bit about the development of understand about wholesome and unwholesome?
Sarah just brought a very important point 5 minutes ago, that when we think I feel I have to consider this more, when we feel, oh, it is so difficult, it is above me, and then Sarah reminds us that also that moment should be known. It was 5 minutes ago that you just brought, and I find I have to consider this a bit more. So it is very good if you could elaborate a little more about that. And we think, oh, it is so above me, we all may have such thought.
So if we're thinking about well, there's doubt and whether there's any understanding now, or when will it be vipassana jnana, and what would it be like if there was understanding of the arising and falling away of dharmas, and is this satipatthana, all this kind of thinking is thinking with doubt and thinking about me, and it's the idea of I is behind it, because it's all about my development, my panya, my sati. So it hinders from just understanding what appears now very naturally. Actually, it's more fantasy thinking, just the fantasy about I and my development, and just forgetting completely about visible object that appears now, sound now, one world at a time. And that's the world at the moment of seeing. It's just visible object, that's all. And so no need to think about, how will it go in the future, and what's this understanding, and what will happen to me. It happens, it's naturally, but gradually when understanding develops, I think it begins to see how very useless it is, and it hinders from understanding just that which appears now. We forget that it's just Dhamma, and this is the meaning of understanding Dhamma as Dhamma, or the characteristic of Dhamma.
Very important, yes.
Just before we go to Thai's question, just to explain in case it's not clear, the 8 path factors are each a mental factor that arises at a moment of insight or enlightenment. So obviously samadhi refers to the mental factor of panya, samasati refers to the mental factor of sati, samavayama to the mental factor of virya, and so on. So they actually refer to the mental factors that arise together for the development of the path.
Just one other small point on Tam's point, like as she said, when samatas
developed, even there's understanding the difference between vitakka and vichara. It's not like ordinary understanding, but then we're talking about highly developed samatha bhavana that can distinguish the factors to that degree, I think.
Turning to Thai's question about the difference between samatha, between wholesome and unwholesome.
Knowing wholesome and unwholesome.
The process of the understand about wholesome and unwholesome develop.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily a process, but it's a question of understanding what is the signature of each, because every wholesome moment is accompanied by wholesome mental factors, and every unwholesome moment is accompanied by certain unwholesome mental factors. And for the wholesome mental factors, one of those is the mental factor of passaddhi, or calmness, whereas the unwholesome moments, jittas, are accompanied by a mental factor that is restlessness, always. So if there is the understanding of those particular signature indicators, then that is the understanding of the difference between the two.
I'm sorry, maybe I doesn't explain correctly. I mean about the process. So there must be a process for the samatha panya development.
Well, it's understanding things like the difference between moments of wholesome and unwholesome, because that does require some panya. And it's also understanding the significance of the particular subject of contemplation. For example, when it's the earth kasina, it's a question of reflecting in a wholesome way with understanding on the earth element. When the subject of contemplation is death, it's a question of the way of reflecting in a wholesome manner on the significance of death and the fragility of life, and so on. So that panya develops in that way, but it is not as though there are particular stages in the same way that we have come to learn about in terms of insight. But of course, as concentration also develops at the same time, then there are levels of concentration as panya, as the development approaches jhana.
How can it develop? How can it develop? Do you see the danger of clinging to the central object now? Do you see the danger of clinging to the sensuous objects now?
No.
So it's not calm. First of all, it does mean that you understand the process of the development of samatha. But at this very moment, what is that? But it does mean that they cannot be calm, but it arises with each moment of kusala. So whether now it's kusala or akusala is unknown, not known yet, right? So each word of the Buddha is experienced by citta and cetasika. For example, seeing, there is seeing from birth to death, but when will it be object of understanding it as not self? It's just only thinking, the accumulation of the understanding from moment to moment to have that really moment of direct understanding. And it's daily life. For example, if you use the word hardness, it's just seeing, right? Exactly. by way of arising and falling away, but different conditions, so different characteristics. Even hardness is there now, the moment of understanding it as a reality. It takes time, quite a long, long time, beyond expectation, but keep on seeing the value of understanding is better than not understanding. And at that moment it is strong sanya, because clinging clings to all five khandas. And at this moment, what is the object of sanya to cling to as I? What is the object? Everything. See, unknown, clinging to feeling, clinging to sanya, clinging to all sankhara khanda, and also clinging to vijnana, which experiences. That's why no expectation of how much panya will grow, but understanding little by little will condition a little bit of panya from time to time unknowingly. So the proof is at moment of seeing, at moment of touching, at moment of thinking, any moment, whether there is a moment of understanding it as not self. Without learning the words of the Buddha, there is no condition at all to understand it. And few moments of understanding reality as not self, but it works little by little. So it's great patience, khanti parami, with virya parami, with satya parami, with adidana parami. Keep on, no one at all, only all these parami. If someone is asked whether there is clinging to sanya now, if one doesn't know sanya, how can we say that yes, it clings? But actually it clings without understanding, unknowingly, already, from moment to moment. And when we learn about the path leading to understanding reality until kilesa is eradicated completely, we have to understand what we heard about, a little more and more understanding, like panya. See, there are many levels of panya. And what is panya? It's not to cook or to do anything, but to understand whatever appears. Otherwise, it's not panya. Talking about different matters, it's not panya. But talking about that which appears now, to have more and more understanding as not self, not under anyone's control. It's there already, seeing. No matter what, there is thinking, there is seeing. So fast. So the first thing is to see the difference of that which experiences and that which cannot experience as it is. For example, there is no person as object of seeing. There is only that which can see, that which can be seen. Right now, see, no one there. Only few words, but with more and more considering, it can condition more and more detaching with the idea of self. But it takes quite a long, long time. But it's better to know correctly that it needs the patience and khanti and all paramis. When panya is there, daily life getting better a little bit through deeds and speech because of understanding. More metta, more karuna as it's accumulated, not more or less than what is there. And this is panya, the first of the Eightfold Path, the first one. And the second one, what is that?
and thinking, right thinking.
You use the word thinking, but actually it says vitakka cetasika. It arises with sampadichana. That moment it doesn't think. So if we keep on thinking that it's thinking, that is not right. Because through the sense door, it does not think. Even it arises with sampadichana or sandirana or other moments. So who knows the characteristics of thinking? Besides the 10 citta, it's there already. But it's the second of the Eightfold Path. So it's quite important. Because usually in a day, we think about other things all the time, not knowing that because of vitakka cetasik, which touches on that object, when there is akusala, it touches wrongly as something permanent. But when it's begin to be right one, it knows that does vitakka appear now? But it's there. Because it's that which touch on the object which does not appear as to seeing. See, just the next moment followed the seeing, the object appears different. To seeing, it appears as is seen. Actually, that which sees, that one is that which experiences, and the other is only that which is experienced. So how fast? And then it's followed by mind-door process, many mind-door process. So comparing the processes of mind-door and the process of seeing, so short. So when it's panya which can experience it directly through mind-door, the sense-door appears so very rapid, like lightning, no shape, no form, as something at all. So the 5 senses doorway can directly be experienced through mind-door after the 5 door has fallen away. It's just like now, but it's covered up because of no understanding of what Buddha has enlightened. And out of his compassion, he knew that it's impossible for anyone to understand it better and clearer, to begin the idea of no self, little by little.
Ajarn, I think vitakka is said to be the food of the world.
Vitakka is that which touches the object, which sees before it arises. But it cannot perform the function of seeing, or it cannot arise together with seeing.
So is there any reason why is it called the food of the world?
It's the way it is, so there's no why.
When we're talking about the Eightfold Path factors, understanding needs vitakka, samasankappa, to touch the object. So it's like the foot, it's the necessary support. That's why it's also classified when one divides the path up into different aspects as understanding. It's the support for understanding, to understand reality. So it's like the support or the foot.
Okay, so in the meaning of support, being the support.
Like the foot, that's how I think of it.
Vitakka.
Vitakka has to touch the object in order for understanding to understand. Like sanya remembers everything, whatever has been marked, but it depends on what vitakka touches as to what is experienced at that moment. Depends what vitakka, we can say, thinks about or what it experiences. So in order for understanding develop, it has to touch that right object, that reality that can be directly understood at that moment. So in that way, it's like a foot or the support for understanding to arise. So closely related. That's why it's the second factor of the path.
Is this Vitakka at the moment of Bhavanga Citta?
We're not talking about Bhavanga Cittas, we're talking about at moments when I thought we were talking about the Eightfold Path, moments of right understanding.
Yeah.
Not Vipaka Cittas, not Bhavanga Cittas. But Vitakka arises with those Bhavanga Cittas. It arises with every citta other than the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and one or two jhana cittas. And at those moments it touches the object. But when we're talking about understanding of reality, it touches rightly that object, which is the object of right understanding and the other path factors. There can be wrong Vitakka too, and Vipaka Vitakka, but this is the Kusala, right Vitakka. We talk, because we use conventional language just like the Buddha did, so we can talk about thinking, we can talk about dreaming, we can talk about feeling pleasant, but whatever we talk about when we're talking about the Buddha's teachings, it is about different realities. So just because we talk about thinking doesn't mean it's not now. What is being discussed are Paramatta Dhammas. So every time we talk about thinking, to be precise, it's Vitakka Cetasika.
Ajarn, I think I heard you say something a minute ago. I may be wrong, but if I'm correct in what I heard, I'd like you to explain it a bit more. Vitakka touches the object seeing sees before it arises.
Say it again, please.
Well, I may be wrong. Vitakka touches the object that seeing sees.
Is that right? When seeing has fallen away, what Sampadichana knows?
What seeing has seen, just see that visible object.
Okay, it says, okay. That makes sense. So it touches the object that seeing has seen. It doesn't arise with seeing, but it does with Sampadichana, Santirana, and those following. Okay, thank you.
Just clarify again. At the moment of Bhavanga, it is Vitakka?
Yes, Bhavanga, Vitakka is there with each moment of Bhavanga, yes.
But at seeing, no.
With seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, only need 7 Cetasikas, only the universals, nothing else at all. So whatever mental factor we're talking about, if it's not one of the 7 universal Cetasikas, then it doesn't arise. But every other citta needs more.
The more understanding about Paramatta Dhammas, the less confusion about conventional realities, but something I didn't quite get here.
So, for example, if there is understanding that what is seen is just visible object, then when we talk or other people talk about moving the table or thinking about the flowers, or there's no confusion, no mixing up. So we use conventional language as usual. And when other people are using it, there's no confusion, no mixing up. what is real and what is conceptual. So when we hear about thinking, or if we're talking about strong and weak, asankarika and sasankarika chittas, and we're talking about stories, we know that it just refers to one chitta at a time, not to a whole story like when I came here, was it sasankarika or asankarika? Because that is mixing up the conventional ideas with the Dhamma. So the more understanding of Dhammas, then less mixing up with concepts.
Yes.
I have a question from the list, Nina. So this is for you first and then Ajarn afterwards. So yesterday, Alan raised the question about mindfulness in schools, and I gave him the answer that we discussed about how only if it refers to the Buddha's teachings does it harm the Buddha's teachings, but how it can lead to wrong practices and how it's not useful. Mindfulness outside the domain of the Buddha's teachings helps to condition less harmful behavior. It's been shown that violent prisoners, for example, learn to overcome the impulse to lash out as long as they're following a meditation practice. I would like to ask about ahimsa and why it is said to come first in the sutta, and whether that wouldn't mean that non-harmfulness, whether or not accompanied by panya, is in line with the Buddha's teachings. And personally, I'm glad to see a growing tendency to non-harmfulness. Is there conclusive evidence that mindfulness meditation leads to reduce, if there is conclusive evidence that mindfulness meditation leads to reduced violent anger,
so he uses many words from the in conventional sense and not the reality. So he seems that people don't understand really about mindfulness, knowing what one is doing, for example. You know, we hear that a lot. So, and how can it help to know the citta now? It's only talking in general terms. It's not any understanding.
Ajarn, do you have any comments?
Is there anything outside the teachings of the Buddha?
No reality outside the Buddha's teachings.
So what is mindfulness?
Sati Cetasika, which is not understood.
Do they know about sati?
They have no idea what sati is.
What is that which is taken from mindfulness?
Yes. Wrong view and wrong practice.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I just hear that Ajarn said that there's a lot of clinging to sanya. A few minutes ago, I'm not sure that is this correct.
Just now or before?
Just
before.
Like before.
They can be clinging to anything, and she mentioned that people talk about clinging to sanya, but actually they don't know what sanya is. So usually it's like clinging to memories, but not really understanding what sanya is, but still they can be clinging to the idea of sanya and clinging to having sanya to particular objects. So clinging can cling to anything. And what about what he said about ahimsa, non-harmfulness, because he mentions about ahimsa in the sutta, and he thinks that this is this kind of meditation practice is non-harmful because people are less likely to get angry or violent or something like this.
Not forever. Not forever.
It's no different from any other technique out there for controlling, as they would say, one's emotions. So it's only as valid as the rest of them.
And what you take for kusala might be, or maybe akusala. Like mindfulness.
Yeah, there wouldn't be any kusala involved in the mindfulness practice itself. Just like there's no kusala involved in other kinds of therapy, although they may be well-intentioned.
What about when any kind of thinking arises? If there is the understanding that it's just vitakka touches that thought, it can condition, relax or relieve even just a little. Not me, it depends on vitakka, whether it touches the object of such thought or the other object. So when there is more understanding of a reality, it's very beneficial to support the idea of no self. You cannot stop thinking that way because vitakka touches, not because you can think about it or cannot think about it.
It's a very good point, because it's like a condition for true calm at those moments, calm with understanding, when there is the appreciation that whatever arises now, whatever is experienced, depends on vitakka to touch that object. So no one would like to have angry thoughts, but if there are conditions for vitakka to touch this or that object, it's conditioned already, but at that moment of understanding, the citta is truly calm, and the calm with right understanding of realities is higher calm, far more beneficial and useful than the calm which is developed but still with the idea of I, or I can do.
That's why when thinking arises, there can be condition for direct awareness with understanding of it as just a reality, which thinks.
Can one say, because he's mentioned this ahimsa, non-harmfulness, can one say that whenever any kusala arises only, then it is ahimsa or non-harmful, alobha adosa at that moment?
That's why it's the foot of the world. From seeing, hearing, it goes on and on with thinking. Someone might think, I don't like to think at all. See, impossible.
Can we say that understand the danger of unwholesome and understand of wholesome, understand wholesome citta at this moment is the development of samatha?
Do you just want to name or call it? To really understand it as not self.
This may be full of incorrect understanding here, but vitaka touches the object. We call that thinking. Without vitaka, there could be no thinking. But it's. I guess my question is, how does that differ from, I guess it's papanja, which is the, at least I think it is, what is it? It thinks on and on. That's how a story goes on and on. Is that may be wrong?
So if we're talking about papancha thinking, it's referring to moments of thinking with lobha, mana, or ditthi in particular, but vitaka arises with every citta other than the 10, so even in the sense or process, and in the mind or process, when there's conventionally what we think of as thinking, then vitaka is there at each moment with whatever kind of citta arises, even with the adverting consciousness and with those following cittas, no matter kusala, akusala, vipaka, akusala or akusala cittas. So even for the Buddha, vitaka is there at each moment of thinking, but papancha at all.
That's why it's the factor of the Eightfold Path.
So what we call thinking, and whether it's kusala or akusala thinking, are the moments in the, as we were discussing earlier, the javana stage of the mind or process. Vitaka, of course, arises with cittas outside the kusala and akusala cittas, so it performs a particular function of touching the object, and it has the designation thinking because it touches the object. But when we talk about thinking of this or that, wholesome or unwholesome, we're just referring to the kusala and kusala or akusala cittas.
Does it touch the seeing now? See? So it's not the factor of the Eightfold Path yet.
Ajarn, you just said so it's not a factor of the Eightfold Path yet. Is that what you said? So, is that implying that it touches
other thing?
Pardon?
Other thing, not the object of the Eightfold Path.
At this moment, if it's not touching reality,
right,
then cannot be path.
Yes.
Path.
Okay. Maybe
Like
it's
if
not
it's
okay. Can you explain that more?
Well, like, for example, at the moment of thinking about my yellow shirt, vitaka is there each moment of thinking.
Yes.
But it's just fantasy world, so
Right.
it can't be the path moments.
Right.
Because it's not reality.
But if
which
it's,
is being
it's touching
experienced.
realities, then
At that moment, it's touching the concept which is thought about through the mind door.
yes, the yellow shirt. But if it's touching,
It's aware of it, which is touched by vitaka. Sammasati, the factor of the Eightfold Path, is aware of that which vitaka touches.
Reality which it touches.
okay, okay, thank you.
I forgot what chitta Tinamida arises with. It's a loop.
So we are back to Sasankarika. Only with chitta, with Sasankarika.
Sasankarika.
Yeah,
okay.
but it is a difficult subject, as we have just heard, to distinguish. We know the words, but maybe only when there is panya it will know.
So any akusala chitta, which are sasankarika,
yes,
have Tinamida?
No, I don't think so. Not every.
Not all.
If it arises, it has to be with sasankarika.
Okay.
Yeah. But I am now only words, you see.
So usually Tinamida is used to indicate the moment of like drowsiness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that only when we are sleepy that there are Tinamida. There is Tinamida. It arises at other moments too.
While one is so sleepy, does one want anything?
Just sleeping.
While one is so sleepy, would like to sleep. Is there any moment of wanting or craving for anything?
I think maybe craving for
lying down, sleep, for what?
Craving for sleeping.
Strongly?
Not other objects.
Yeah, strongly or very weak?
Very weak.
When it's weak, there is Tinamida, Sankarika.
If one just feels not enough, no conditions for kusala now, maybe one feels one can't be bothered to help or to answer or to ask a useful question for others. Mm-hmm. So just weak, akusala.
Always akusala.
Even when say that don't sleep because next moment it will be vipassana. What about that moment? Still wanting sleep, not vipassana.
And the moments of
because of you, but because of reality right there.
I suppose it arises more often than we think.
And that moment can be moment of panya, which knows exactly all are anatta.
Yes.
The bad question, I cannot get anything, so I to come back. Ajarn, could you please elaborate a little bit more about vitakka again?
It does not arise with the 10 chittas only.
It does not arise?
It cannot arise with the 10 chittas, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching.
At every moment other than that. And yeah, normally Ajarn talking about like seeing appear now and whatever, is this I'm not sure it's appear now, like a thinking appear to be considered as a vitaka.
We just learn to understand more and more that all dhammas are anatta.
Sure.
That's all. To understand more. That nothingness is clearer and clearer. No one can do anything, no self, no one at all. If there is no understanding of realities, it has to be idea of self there.
And Tam, can Tina and Mida arise with moha mula citas, without lobha or dosa?
I'm not sure.
Sankarika or asankarika? Or lobha mula citas, one dosa mula cita, the sasankarikas, just those 5, but not the moha mula citas, because they're not sasankarika.
Okay. Okay. So that is quite tricky because the citta that are the moha mula citta can be weak as well, but still they're not called sasankarika. Quite tricky.
I have another question. You said that vitaka touches the object which citta experience. Vitaka touches the object which citta experience. And my question is, can vitaka choose the object as well? Which citta, which reality can choose the object? Yeah, which reality can choose the object? That's right.
So what support vitaka to think of this or that, or to arise and has such and such object?
I'm just thinking about it for understand more about the characteristic of vitaka, what vitaka is. Sometimes we're just talking about it's difficult to understand because of sanya.
And other sankarakanda, other citasikas as well, depending on with lobha or with dosa, depending on conditions. But sanya, can you think of when you are 1 year old?
Think about what we are when 1 year old, right? What is the question?
1 year old.
1 year old, no. Okay.
So it depends on sanya and sankarakanda, which conditions such vitaka to arise.
I just mentioned depend on the sanya.
Can you think about that which you have to experience at all?
No.
See, because of no sanya of that object.
No.
Like just now when Tam asked about Tina and Mida, and you said you got nothing out of this question and the answer because you're not familiar with the terms or the words, so sanya hasn't marked and remembered them, so there can't be any useful thinking about them. Like if you said the terms in Vietnamese, no sanya that has marked those terms, so it's meaningless, so there can't be thinking about the meaning of them.
Okay.
My sanya can remember cảm ơn, ngon lắm. Right? Yeah.
Actually, I'm just sanya. It's Mark can remember that normally Ajarn talking about the understand the nimitta of the reality.
Is animitta real?
Nimitta not real.
So it doesn't have function.
Like any concept that we know different. It's an nimitta of reality. Experience.
Can concept do anything?
Can concept
Do anything?
concept cannot do anything. Move. Yes. Itself cannot move, but we think it's control body to move.
When there's understanding, there is no arm at all. There are only different realities. What is that? That's why we learn to understand more and more in order to have less and less wrong understanding of reality. Otherwise, it's just the idea of self or something all the time. As can the eye see?
The eye, right? The eye, right? The eye cannot see.
A moment of seeing.
Again, then the nimitta of it can be understood, right, by understanding.
The nimitta, without the reality, can there be nimitta?
No.
So, what can be directly experienced?
Nimitta of the reality.
Nimitta is real or not real?
Not real.
So, can there be the panya which is aware or understand breath as breath or as what?
Nimitta, right?
Yeah.
Understanding of nimitta of reality.
Yes. My question was, seeing arise to see and understanding the nimitta of the seeing visible object that arise.
The characteristic of the seeing is understood by panya, but what panya experiences at that moment is the nimitta of the seeing. But so we don't say that.
Because
Because when, for example, when panya is weak, it cannot experience a single moment of seeing. Obviously, it will experience multiple moments of seeing consciousness. And its experiencing of those multiple moments is just as a period of seeing, not as an individual moment. So it's not seeing. Panya is not understanding individual moments of seeing. That's the nimitta effect. The seeing is arising and falling away so quickly.
Saturupa, right? That it can be understood. But breath, yes, it's a concept already.
So can panya understand breath?
Yes. You mean the reality of breath or the breath?
Just breath.
Breath. I think panya can understand anything.
Even if there's no reality, can there be understanding of it as not self, as Dhamma, as a reality?
Oh.
So actually, what is breath?
I just remember that is the...
Remember?
Yeah, I don't know.
or understand.
What is the breath? What the breath, right? You mean the quality of the breath or the breath?
Without reality, can there be breath?
Experienced by citta.
Yes, but what is experienced?
Arupa.
You call it arupa, but what rupa?
What rupa? I don't know.
Without the reality, can you say that that is rupa? You can tell when you understand the characteristic which is not that which experiences.
Okay, I got it. Motion.
From whom?
From motion appear.
To what, please?
Body consciousness. Yeah.
Why do you call body consciousness?
Because experience like the body touch.
Yeah, because there are 5.
The nature of it. Not understanding, it's just arise and fall away, nature of motion like that. And thinking about...
When you talk about motion, is that object of experience at that very moment? Or you think about it?
Already think, but it's about this, but already...
Can the breath experience anything?
No, through the body sense. It's not directly understand each moment, but it's true, like seeing now, right? Hearing now is appear. It's not about direct, but...
That's why even it's real, it's hard and soft, tangible object, but it can be called by shape and form or idea about it, like finger or ear or breath. Would you like to be aware of breath?
By condition.
Would you?
By condition. Cannot say.
Unexpectedly, everything. So even panya, no matter of what degree, it appears more and more as no self, no one. All are anatta. Otherwise, it's not the understanding of anatta-ness. It's always I who understand or who knows.
Utu, temperature, and the Jivitindra Rupa only arises in living being.
Has to be conditioned by karma, so only in the groups of rupa conditioned by karma. That's why when you were mentioning, I said, did you say about Jivitindriya? Because nothing to do with the flowers, because only groups of rupas in the body conditioned by karma can have Jivitindriya.
Yes.
There is some kind of rupa that is conditioned. Let me look at my notes here. It's called dead matter. And it has no jivit indriya. So it seems there are 2 types of indriya: rupa indriya and nama indriya.
Before talking about that point, can we understand the difference between the Atta Nuttiti and Sakkaya Ditti, to see the difference before knowing whether that is living or not living at all. So, what is that? See? And what is this? And what is this? Different. I do not take that from me or mine or myself, but this, even it's hard, exactly the same as that. But this is Sakkaya, taken it as mine, not just something. It is something to the other, but to me it's Sakkaya. It belongs to me, it's me. And when we talk about that which appears, whether it is with Chivitindriya or not Chivitindriya, the color now, where is it? It's seen, but where is it? Without the other rupa, like the four primary rupas, there cannot be that which can impinge on the eye, different from hardness, softness, because that cannot impinge on the eye. And at moment of looking at it, is it with Chivitindriya or no Chivitindriya? See, it cannot be told just by looking. What about the wax museum? Looks alive, but who knows that that is not a person, it's only, what you call it, the museum work, wax work. But you see that in order to have sanya, to understand whether there is Chivitindriya or without Chivitindriya. For example, that color cannot be taken for living being, right? The truth is that it's not living being. It's something. Why? Because we think about it. It cannot experience anything. It cannot see, it cannot know who touches it.
So you're saying that if it's living matter, it has to be associated with living being.
Matter is in the Dhamma is not classified as living or not living.
Well, in this dictionary it was.
Sorry?
In this dictionary it was.
Could you read it again, because I missed the actual word you used?
Oh, okay.
No matter what word we use, it depends on reality, the truth of it, whether it's real or not. For example, that whatever without the Chivitindriya, it's not living, body or mind or cetasika.
So there are two kinds of Chivitindriya. One is the cetasika, which is one of the 7 universal cetasikas that arises with every citta. So this is nama Jivitindriya, so it cannot arise in flowers or trees because it has to arise with citta. So it arises with every citta in any realm, any being. And the other kind is rupa Jivitindriya, and it arises in a kalapa, a group of rupas, minimum 8 other rupas plus Jivitindriya minimum. And this is the groups of rupas that are conditioned by karma. Outside the body, each group of rupas is only conditioned by utu, temperature, but in the body, inside the sakaya, the groups of rupas can be conditioned by karma, chitta, utu temperature, or ahara nutriment. So in the groups of rupas conditioned by chitta or temperature or nutriment, no jivitindriya rupa, it just arises in those groups conditioned by karma in the body.
Yes, well, it refers in this dictionary to the 8 kalapa, the 8 rupa kalapa, as so-called dead matter. Sorry? It refers to the so-called dead matter as the primitive group with 8 physical phenomena. So, huh?
Did you say dead matter?
That's what it says here.
Yes.
The
So
so-called dead matter
right?
is the one that arises with 8 physical phenomena. 8
Right.
kalapa. That's what I
Where
take
does
it.
Jivitindriya come into it?
It doesn't
without
call it
Jivitindriya.
Jivitindriya. It says dead matter, so I don't know what it's referring to. It's the kalapa with 8 physical elements.
It's 8 when there is no Jivitindriya arising with it. But when karma condition the Jivitindriya with that 8, in that kalapa there are 9 rupa.
Okay.
So it is at least not less than that for each kalapa. But when it's conditioned by karma, it conditions the Jivitindriya with that kalapa. That's why even this is hard, but it's from that which is not conditioned by karma. Because only karma can condition the Jivitindriya rupa.
Okay.
So the 8 do not include Jivitindriya. There are 4 primaries.
That's how I understood it here,
minimum
that the 8
9.
would not include Jivitindriya. So that was called dead matter because it didn't have Jivitindriya.
Mm-hmm. So where is the reference to living matter, though? You said there was a reference to living matter.
No.
No.
So if it's dead matter, like the waxwork, fake person, or the dead body, which is like a tree, then no Jivitindriya, because...
That's right. The 8 here that they include does not include Jivitindriya. So I assume that it would be living matter if it included Jivitindriya.
No, there's no such thing as
Okay.
living matter. Yeah. You're thinking of, say, flowers as living matter, or a tree. Is that your... Because as far as I
that's
understand...
not from here, but it
No.
seems I have heard reference to plants as being living matter, but
You're
not
right.
living beings.
Right. That's the conventional distinction
Yeah.
between dead matter and living matter. That's a conventional distinction,
Okay.
but not in the Dhamma, not in the description of rupas. No, there's no distinction between the conventional living matter and conventional dead matter.
Okay.
May have given the impression from there that there was that distinction, but I'm not sure why they do call it
Oh,
dead
yes,
matter.
there is in the next paragraph. It says
Okay.
the simplest form of living matter is the ninefold vitality unit.
I think they're just referring to, by dead matter, they're referring to when there's no more living being and it's just a corpse and groups of rupa arising conditioned by temperature, so no
And it has
Jivitindriya.
their references to say it has 9 kalapa. So it does include... I'm just
Anyway.
trying to see what I'm reading.
Right.
Is this about rupa?
Sorry?
Is it
Rupa kalapa.
rupa kalapa? At least 8.
Yes,
For-
at least 8, and they say it's so-called dead matter.
For any kalapa.
And with 9, it seems to be the simplest form of living matter.
They give any examples of what they mean by living matter?
No?
No. So it's not a distinction that I'm familiar with elsewhere, dead matter, living matter. There's no such thing as living matter in the Dhamma, just because there's a being and there's mental phenomena and physical phenomena only.
Do they call like groups of rupas that are arising now in the body which are not conditioned by karma? They might call it living matter, but it doesn't have jivitindriya in it. So one can't use that as the distinction. So many groups of only 8 rupas in the kalapa now, conditioned by other ways, by chitta or temperature, but without jivitindriya.
Is it possible, Ajarn, that, say, what we take for flowers or trees or plants are in reality rupas that arise in kalapas of more than 8?
What is that which is more than 8? What rupa is make it more than 8?
For example, if there was, this isn't an example, but the sound conditioned by temperature, that kalapa must have 9 rupas. That's one example.
Not flower.
Flowers. Very sound.
What about flowers with a perfume, with a scent?
But that's one of the 8. One of the 8 already, the odor. Every group of rupas has odor.
It appears in this context to say that there are 10 kalapas, 10 dasaka kalapas, and that includes the 8 plus jivit indriya plus one of the corporal phenomena which relate to the 5 senses. So
that
the
has
heart,
to be in the body.
Yes.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there can be many, but in the body.
But it just talks about up to 10.
What makes the difference, the appearance different? Like tree, when it's old and dead, it dies. What would we say for tree? It grows, and then it what? Dies?
Dies, yes.
Okay. But what makes it different from when it doesn't die yet? To look different. Only temperature. So there must be only 8 rupas in a kalapa, conditioned by temperature. Is a tree old? See, young or old? By temperature. But for living being, there are also other conditions as well.
And can be, yes, many more rupas in the kalapa, like when moving or something. We should pause so that Ajarns and for other people their journeys are not so long. So we will see everyone tomorrow, same time, same schedule.